The Secret of Helena. Warning: what you are about to hear is a roller coaster of emotions. If you don't have the stomach for family secrets, shocking plot twists, and the fragile hope of new beginnings, it's best to stop here. A swirl of cold wind whips Gabriel's face the instant he steps out of his car. The Winter Ball is the most anticipated event of the year. A stunning palace of fine wines and elite company. But for him, it's just a cruel reminder that he's alone. He braces himself, determined not to let memories of the past ruin his night. Then, from across the grand hall, he sees her. Helena, his ex-wife. She's not alone. She's holding the hands of 4 children who have the exact same color and shape as his own eyes. The Winter Ball was held in the heart of Lisbon, at the luxurious hotels near Eduardo VII Park. The icy December air clung to every breath of Gabriel Moura, 37, as he passed by the doorman, who greeted him with a polite nod. The city's twinkling lights reflected off the fresh snowfall, giving the night an almost fairy tale aura. Inside, the hotel lobby dazzled with Christmas decorations, golden garlands, and artistically adorned pine trees. The lilting notes of a string quartet floated down the hall, drawing him toward the grand ballroom. Gabriel had always been considered an attractive man. Tall, with a chiseled jawline and haunted green eyes, he moved with a confident grace that came less from ego and more from an innate sense of self. However, tonight, a painful sense of loneliness squeezed his heart. Attending the ball alone was never his plan. Exactly a year before, he had pictured himself standing there with his wife Helena on his arm, both in elegant attire, exchanging polite smiles with Lisbon's elite, networking for his philanthropic projects. But life had taken a brutal turn. He and Helena had separated under painful circumstances that still felt raw, despite the veneer of normalcy he tried to maintain with his designer suit, perfectly knotted tie, and polished demeanor. Gabriel felt like an open wound in the middle of a dazzling crowd. Every ornament, every laugh, every passing scent reminded him of the life he had lost. He tried to distract himself by thinking about trivial conversations about his work at Moura e Castello Investments, about the latest business headlines, about the real estate deals the firm had closed. He thought about the people he might meet, potential clients, old acquaintances like Teresa Costa from his university days, and donors who could support his most cherished cause, the foundation he had created in honor of his late father, to fund scholarships for underprivileged children. The great double doors of the ballroom swung open, revealing a stunning space, glittering chandeliers, marble floors, and couples waltzing in formal gowns. Upon crossing the entrance, Gabriel felt both an unsettling excitement and a sense of dread. Somewhere in that crowd might be a face from the past. Helena's face, perhaps. But in the whirlwind of suits and dresses, he didn't see her right away. He exhaled slowly, reminding himself that tonight was meant to be a new beginning, or at least a testament to his ability to move on. After all, Helena had carved her own path, seemingly unconcerned with the shared dreams they once built. He clenched his fists in his pockets. This night is for me, he thought. I'll enjoy it no matter what. Gabriel's mind wandered to the day he met Helena. It was during a summer internship at an investment fund in Zurich, when they were both graduate students full of dreams. She was bold, brilliant, and carried an aura of mystery that captivated him. Helena's lush, dark hair framed her olive skin, and her deep brown eyes shone with ambition. She came from a modest background in Sintra, Portugal, and her accent, along with her fierce determination, made her stand out among the crowd of interns. Their attraction was instantaneous, fueled by late-night strategy sessions and stolen glances during coffee breaks. By the end of the internship, they had begun a relationship that seemed as bright and promising as their future careers. 2 years after finishing graduate school, he at the University of Lisbon, she at the University of Coimbra, they married in a private ceremony in a small chapel in the Portuguese countryside. His mother, Dona Fatima Moura, and her father, Senhor Álvaro da Silva, blessed the union with tears of joy. However, as they built their careers, cracks began to form. Both were ambitious. Both wanted the best for themselves. Ironically, the very drive that brought them together began to pull them apart. Helena felt suffocated by the conventional life Gabriel seemed to desire, a house in the suburbs and dinners that ended early. Meanwhile, Gabriel struggled to keep up with Helena's relentless pace for success and adventure. She accepted job opportunities in Hong Kong and Paris, while Gabriel stayed in Lisbon to care for his sick father and stabilize his burgeoning investment firm, Moura e Castelo, which he co-founded with his best friend from college, João Castelo. Long, silent months apart replaced the passion they once shared. Emails and text messages became the primary means of communication. The final blow came when his father passed away, and Helena did not attend the funeral. She was stuck in a negotiation in Shanghai, or so she claimed. Gabriel never forgave her for it. The day after the funeral, he filed for divorce. The year since the divorce was granted felt like a haze of regrets and half-hearted attempts to move on. Gabriel's mother tried to console him. João Castelo tried to bury him in work, hoping he would forget his pain with corporate success. But the wound was deep. He wasn't just losing Helena. He was losing the idea of the family he so desperately wanted to build, the stability he had promised to create, a promise that was now broken. Little did he know that this fateful night at the winter ball would unravel secrets that would wound him more than he could ever have imagined. A shocking revelation. A month ago, Gabriel had almost turned down the invitation to the winter ball. The event, held annually by Lisbon's philanthropic circle, was a magnet for the wealthiest and most influential personalities. It was an opportunity to socialize, raise money for various causes, and display power and status. Moura e Castelo had been a major sponsor for the past 3 years. João Castelo said, "We can't miss it. Our firm's entire PR campaign is based on us being front and center. That's how we attract high-level clients." Gabriel, sitting behind his mahogany desk, looked at the gilded edges of the invitation. The bold calligraphy read, "Winter Ball, a night of generosity and glamour." He sighed. "I'm just not in the mood, João." His partner, a tall man with light blonde hair and a relentless optimism, placed a hand on his shoulder. "Look, I know you've had a tough time, but it's time to get back out there. If you don't, you'll never move on." Gabriel was half tempted to crumple the invitation. The memories of attending this event with Helena the year before, dressed in matching blue outfits, dancing under the chandelier, celebrating the expansion of their philanthropic network, still haunted him. At the time, the final stage of their divorce loomed over them, though they pretended everything was fine for the cameras. But João was right. Gabriel's philanthropic foundation needed exposure, and the firm needed him to show he was still the confident leader everyone relied on. Maybe the winter ball could mark a turning point, a chance to re-enter society with his head held high. After all, what were the chances of Helena being there? She was globe-trotting, seemingly unconcerned with the Lisbon philanthropic circuit. Reluctantly, he wrote his acceptance, sealed the envelope, and sent it back. The next day, he sent his measurements to his tailor for a new suit, an outward sign that he intended to move on, even if his heart was still behind. The clinking of champagne glasses and the resonant echoes of stringed instruments filled the grand hall. Women in satin gowns floated arm in arm with men in impeccable tuxedos. A faint scent of pine from the Christmas decorations mixed with the sweet smell of desserts arranged on the buffet table. Gabriel tried to relax by the drink station, stirring a glass of sparkling water. He was never one for much alcohol, especially when he needed to maintain his composure. Around him, groups of socialites whispered gossip and speculation. Teresa Costa, a college acquaintance who now worked for a major newspaper, offered him a nod from across the room. He returned the gesture, but avoided prolonged eye contact, unwilling to engage in deep conversation. His eyes scanned the dancing couples, the swirl of colors and elegance. Normally, he would find it all fascinating. The soft glow of the chandeliers above, the confident laughter of proud donors sharing their wealth, the whirlwind of philanthropic ambition that actually did some good in the world. But tonight, an uncomfortable tension hung over him. Something in the air felt dense, as if the energy in the room was rife with revelations waiting to be spilled. He moved away from the crowd, making his way through elegantly dressed men and women. A group of corporate bankers tried to engage him in a conversation about recent stock market fluctuations. Another small group from a tech startup offered him their new app. He feigned interest, made a few courteous remarks, but found himself slowly moving toward the corner of the hall, where a sense of serene quiet reigned. Just as he was about to sit down at a small table next to a pillar draped with silver garlands, his gaze drifted to the dance floor and froze. The murmuring crowd seemed to blur. The music faded, as if his senses had zeroed in on a single figure. There, standing at the top of the hall's ornate staircase, was Helena. She wore a wine-colored dress that accentuated her slender figure. Her dark hair fell in loose waves over her shoulders. A silence seemed to engulf him, as if a wind had swept through his chest. After all these months, it still felt unreal to see her in person. It wasn't just Helena's presence that paralyzed him. Flanking her were 4 small figures, children, 2 girls and 2 boys, each no older than 5 or 6. And in the glare of the chandelier light, Gabriel noticed the most astonishing detail. The eyes of each child were the same luminous green as his. His mind reeled. This had to be some kind of lighting trick. It couldn't be. But as Helena stepped forward, guiding them gently down the staircase, the similarity became even clearer. 4 children with the same color and shape eyes as Gabriel Mora. A wave of disbelief electrified his veins. He had never heard Helena mention children after they separated. He hadn't heard a whisper from mutual acquaintances. And now, out of nowhere, these 4 children had appeared, each with his most distinctive feature. The glass in his hand trembled. The lively chatter of the ball diminished to a low hum. All he could do was stare, mesmerized, as Helena and those children entered the crowd, heading without a detour in his direction. Gabriel slowly rose to his feet, his heart pounding. If Helena saw him, she gave no outward sign. She turned to exchange greetings with a member of the philanthropic committee, her politely in place smile. The children clung to her hands. One of the girls looked timidly around the room. Up close, the resemblance was even more impossible to deny. Each child had inherited the green eyes that were so distinct in Gabriel's family. Each one had some subtle aspect of his facial structure, a dimple in the cheek, the angular slant of the jaw, the gentle curve of the nose. He took a step closer. His steps stopped, uncertain of how to break the barrier of polite society that held them apart. A swirl of dancers momentarily blocked his path. When he came out, still a few meters away, Helena was there, her expression unreadable. "Hello, Gabriel," she said in a low voice. Even amidst the whirlwind of music and conversation, her voice reached him as if they were the only two people in the room. Her accent seemed a little more pronounced than usual, or perhaps he was just hypersensitive to every detail at that moment. He swallowed, noticing that the children shifted uncomfortably behind her. "Helena," he managed to force the word out. Another breath. "I didn't know you would be here," she said. "The invitation came through an old contact. And Gabriel, I wanted to support the cause. Besides, I thought it might be the right moment." "Moment?" he repeated. He let the word hang, glancing at the children who were now standing awkwardly, clearly uncertain of what was happening between the adults. "Moment for what?" She hesitated, and her gaze dropped to the floor. Then, taking a soft breath, she said, "A moment for you to meet someone." Turning, she placed a soft hand on the shoulder of each child. "Darlings," she whispered to the boy on her right. "This is Gabriel. He's an old friend of mine." Gabriel's heart squeezed. Just an old friend. The boy looked up with wide eyes and offered a polite greeting. The others followed suit, each voice small but distinct. 2 girls, 2 boys, all in a row. His mind spun. He couldn't find the words to ask the question that was crying out for an answer. Instead, he forced a cordial smile. "How are you?" "Fine, thank you," replied the oldest boy, whose hair was brown just like Gabriel's as a child. "My name is Sebastian." The others introduced themselves: Magdalena, Flora, and Tiago. The mention of their names reaffirmed the reality of their existence. Gabriel extended his hand timidly, and each child shook it in a curious, polite way that seemed unusual for their ages. Finally, he turned to Helena. His expression must have been pleading for some kind of explanation. She read it clearly. "Gabriel," she said in a low voice. "I didn't plan to bring them here to surprise you, but I thought perhaps this was the right moment to tell you the truth." A storm of anger, confusion, and anguish swelled within him. He glanced around, aware of the many guests who might be watching. "Perhaps we should talk in private." She nodded. "Yes, let's go to the side lounge. The children can stay with my nanny for a moment." She turned and waved to a woman who was discreetly standing by the doorway, who hurried to approach and took the children away. A muffled roar filled Gabriel's ears as he and Helena slipped along the perimeter of the ballroom. Guests moved aside to let them pass, and in their curious eyes, Gabriel caught glimpses of speculation. Once they reached the smaller adjacent lounge, an ornate room with plush armchairs and soft lighting, they went in and closed the door. The silence in the room was suffocating. Helena stood by a fireplace, the golden light shimmering on her dress. Gabriel remained near the door, as if he were unsure whether to enter completely or to flee. Finally, she waved him over. Her voice, when it came out, trembled with poorly contained emotion. "They are mine." Helena studied him with tear-filled eyes. "Yes," she said softly. "They are your children." The words hit Gabriel like a punch. He staggered back, resting a hand on the door. For a moment, he felt as if the world had turned upside down. The walls closed in on him. His breath caught in his chest. He tried to reconcile the reality of what he had just heard with the life he had been living alone, believing that fatherhood was a dream that died when his marriage ended. How? Why? He struggled to find coherent words. A dozen questions fought for priority in his mind. "Why didn't you tell me? Why 4 children, Helena?" Tears streamed from Helena's eyes, and she clasped her hands together, the diamond bracelet on her wrist glinting in the firelight. "It's complicated, Gabriel. I was pregnant when the divorce became final. In the beginning, I found out I was expecting twins, but there was more. It was a complicated pregnancy that I had to be cared for at a specialized clinic in Geneva." She paused, swallowing. "I couldn't tell you. We were both so angry, so hurt. And after your father's funeral, I felt that there was no place for me in your life. There was no place for my burdens." "Burdens!" he exclaimed, his voice rising. "They are children, Helena, our children. You denied me the opportunity to be a father." She flinched. "I know. I was selfish. I was scared. My father convinced me that it might be better this way. He wanted me back in Switzerland, away from the complexities of our relationship." An acute pain gathered behind Gabriel's eyes, half fury, half disgust. He remembered Helena's father, Senor Alvaro da Silva, proud, aristocratic, always disapproving of Gabriel's Portuguese roots and American approach to business. "But 4 of them, Helena. How old are they?" She let out a shaky sigh. "Sebastian and Magdalena are 6. Flora and Tiago are 5. Yes, I was already pregnant once before the divorce process, and it was a complicated timeline. I found out I was expecting Flora and Tiago much later. The pregnancies were almost consecutive. I kept them hidden under the chaos of travel and found ways to deal with it without you knowing." Gabriel closed his eyes. Waves of disbelief washed over him. "All this time, you never gave me a hint. You never told me you had them." Tears ran down Helena's cheeks. "I wanted to do so several times, but every time I built up the courage, something stopped me. Your mother's health problems, the business expansions, and your anger. We ended things on such a bitter note. I thought I could protect the children by keeping them out of a toxic environment." She shook her head. "Now I see. It was a mistake." "Mistake?" he scoffed with a humorless laugh. "It's much more than that, Helena. You stole 6 years of fatherhood from me. I could have known them, helped raise them." She bowed her head. "I know. I can never make it up to you or to them, but I can try to fix this now, if you'll let me." Gabriel sank into an armchair, his limbs numb. This revelation had turned his world upside down. For so long, he thought fatherhood was an unreachable horizon, especially after the divorce. Now, he had children. 4 living, breathing children, who had his eyes, his features, his lineage. He wanted to hate Helena, to be furious with her for this injustice. But a quiet voice in his heart reminded him of how much he had loved her, of how complicated their separation had been. "You should have told me," he whispered, pressing the palms of his hands over his eyes. "I would have been there, no matter what was happening between us. That's a choice you made for both of us, and it wasn't yours to make alone." Helena knelt before him, her voice trembling. "I know. I am so sorry, Gabriel. Please, let's just talk about how to move forward for the sake of the children, if for nothing else." He looked at her, seeing fear and regret cross her face. In the space of a single night, everything had changed, and he had no idea how to proceed in a way that would heal 6 years of damage. "What do you think is the biggest mistake Helena made? Was it keeping the children a secret, or something else entirely, the beginning of a new family?" Overwhelmed by the shock of Helena's confession, Gabriel found himself looking back. He remembered the bitter arguments that led to the divorce, how his father's terminal illness pressured him to stay in Lisbon, how Helena, with her relentless career drive, had accepted an offer in Shanghai, simultaneously chafing at Gabriel's pleas for her to return. He remembered the day he discovered the plane tickets she had booked not just for business, but for a possible permanent move abroad. The day he confronted her. They both said things they could never take back. "You'll never be satisfied with who I am," he accused her. "You don't want a partner, you want a trophy wife," she shot back. With eyes ablaze, they separated, each convinced the other was beyond redemption. And in the whirlwind of lawyers and court proceedings, each tried to build a future free from the other's disappointment. When the divorce was finalized, Gabriel felt strangely numb, as if a part of him had died. He sought solace in turning Mura e Castello into a powerhouse, dedicating himself to philanthropic work, perhaps to fill the void left by the collapse of his personal life. Now, to discover that Helena had become pregnant at that time, or soon after, turned all of his assumptions into lies. He remembered every phone call they missed, every email they left unanswered. They were so consumed by pride that neither of them stopped to consider the bigger picture, that there might be unborn children who deserved togetherness and love. In the quiet lounge, Helena was still kneeling beside his chair, her eyes filled with tears. The soft sound of the Winter Ball Orchestra drifted from beyond the door, an incongruous soundtrack to her shocking revelation. "I need to know everything, Helena," he said softly. "No more secrets." She nodded, stood, and moved toward the window, where she looked out at the city lights. "I found out I was pregnant with Sebastian and Magdalena about 4 months before we filed for divorce. But we were in the middle of the biggest fight of our lives. I was traveling for work, feeling alone, and my father persuaded me to stay quiet until I could return to Portugal. He never liked you, Gabrielle, and he wanted me to raise the children alone." She turned to him, her voice trembling. "But then I found out I was pregnant again with Flora and Tiago, shortly after the twins' birth. The pregnancies were a medical miracle and a complication. Doctors told me the second was an unusual, extremely rare overlapping pregnancy. I was terrified. I didn't know if I would survive. There were complications. I was hospitalized for months in Zurich. During that time, my father kept everything hidden from the outside world. I was too weak to fight him." Gabriel heard every word etching itself into his soul. He imagined Helena alone in a Swiss clinic, battling a dangerous pregnancy, while he, thousands of kilometers away, cursed her name for not being present in his life. A complicated whirlwind of hurt, pity, and anger took hold of him. "And after the births, you just didn't think it was important enough to pick up the phone?" Her eyes welled up with regret. "I was afraid. They told me you had moved on, that you held a grudge, and to be honest, I was ashamed for deceiving you. Yes, I let pride and fear dictate my actions. I thought maybe if I raised them alone, I could avoid all that heartache, all that anger. But it has been a burden on my conscience, especially as the children grow older and start to ask questions about their father." Gabriel closed his eyes, taking a moment to let her words settle. He pictured 4 children on a Swiss estate, asking where Daddy is, and getting no real answers. The anguish coiled even tighter in his chest. With a shaky conviction, he stood. "I have to know them for real. They need to know who I am." Helena moved to open the door. "Of course, they're right next door with the nanny. Let's go." Upon entering the side hall, Gabriel felt the warm ceiling lights shining on him with an almost blinding intensity. The sweet, festive background music felt surreal. He was about to meet his children for the first time in the middle of a dazzling winter ball. In a small antechamber, the 4 children sat in a circle with their nanny, a diminutive woman named Leonore, who was reading them a story to keep them occupied. As soon as Helena and Gabriel entered, the children looked up, their large green eyes fixed on Gabriel. Magdalena, the oldest girl, looked at him with curiosity. "You look like me?" she said in a low voice, as if she were discovering something extraordinary. Gabriel knelt down, feeling tears welling up in his eyes. "I think we do." Sebastian, the oldest boy, put his hands on his hips with a surprising note of confidence. "Mommy says you're very important in Lisbon. Are you a prince or something?" Gabriel couldn't help but let out a small smile. "No, I'm not a prince. I just help run a company and do some work to help others." Flora, a shy girl, snuggled closer to her nanny. "Are you a good man?" she asked in a small voice. The question pierced Gabriel's heart. He looked at Helena, who was watching him in silence, tears glistening on her eyelashes. "I try to be. I'm not always perfect, but I do my best." Tiago, the youngest, touched Gabriel's tie. "I like your tie," he said, smiling. Helena knelt beside Gabriel, placing a hand on Tiago's shoulder. "Children, I want you to know that Gabriel is someone very important to me and to you." She paused. Her gaze flickered to Gabriel. "He is your father." The words settled in the room. There was no thunderous reaction, no immediate meltdown, but a kind of silent awe. Magdalena was the first to speak again. "Does that mean you love us?" Gabriel swallowed the lump in his throat. "More than I can say. Although we are just meeting, I already feel that you are the most precious gift I could have." Sebastian studied Gabriel with a thoughtful look. "Then why didn't you come to see us before?" A glimmer of guilt twisted inside Gabriel, though the fault wasn't really his. But how could he explain that? He looked at Helena, who placed a gentle hand on Sebastian's shoulder. "That's my fault," she said. "I didn't tell him where we were. Sometimes adults make mistakes." Her admission left the children silent. They seemed to accept it with a resilience that only children possess. Slowly, Tiago reached out and touched Gabriel's hair, as if to confirm he was real. Gabriel felt his heart both breaking and mending at the same time. He opened his arms with a hesitation, offering a hug. One by one, the children came forward. First Magdalena, then Sebastian, then the others. Their small arms wrapped around him, and for a moment, he closed his eyes, letting the warmth of their presence wash over him. He didn't notice the tall figure standing in the hall until someone cleared their throat. Gabriel looked up and saw João Castelo, his business partner and old friend, with an expression of complete shock. "Gabriel," João said, struggling for composure. "I've been looking for you, but I see you're busy." His eyes swept over the four children. "Are they?" Gabriel nodded, still hugging the children. "Yes, they're mine." João's mouth hung open slightly, but he recovered quickly, offering a small gesture of congratulations. "I see. Well, I'll leave you to your meeting." He turned to leave, then stopped, giving Gabriel a significant look that seemed to say, "We need to talk." Gabriel knew with a certainty that his entire personal and professional life had just undergone a seismic shift. Everything, from finances to living arrangements and his carefully curated public image, would change once it became public that he had 4 children he had never mentioned. And in his mind, he couldn't help but wonder if more secrets lay behind Helena's sudden reappearance later that night. What do you think will be the most significant challenge for Gabriel in the coming days, now that he knows he has children? A shared journey. After making sure the children were settled in a quiet corner with Leonore, Gabriel and Helena slipped away for more privacy. They went up a short flight of stairs, ending on a balcony overlooking the ballroom. Below them, the party was still in full swing, with dazzling dresses, twinkling lights, and the murmur of polite conversation. He looked down at the swirling crowd. Then he turned to Helena. "This is a lot to absorb, Helena. Are you sure, with no uncertainty about their paternity?" She flinched at the question. "They are yours, Gabriel. I swear on everything I have." His face softened. "I want to believe you, but you have to understand my perspective. You hid them from me for 6 years." Her cheeks flushed. "I understand. If you want a paternity test, I won't stop you. Anything to give you peace of mind." He nodded, feeling a pang of guilt for doubting her. "I'm sorry. It's just so unexpected." She dismissed the apology with a shaky hand. "I deserve your suspicion, but I have no reason to lie now. My father, he encouraged me to take you out of our lives completely. He would never have let you know about them, but they kept asking. They wanted to know why they didn't have a father like other children, and as they grew, their resemblance to you became more obvious." A wave of anger coursed through Gabriel. "Your father, he's the one who convinced you to hide them from me?" She shook her head. "I let him. I was emotionally weak, recovering from the pregnancies far from home. I can't blame him completely." The mention of Senor Alvaro da Silva ignited an old resentment in Gabriel. Helena's father had never hidden his contempt for Gabriel's lack of noble pedigree and American approach to business. But to manipulate a situation in such a profound way was beyond cruel. "You realize this is going to change everything," Gabriel said. "I need to talk to a lawyer, sort out custody and financial arrangements, and the children. How do we help them adapt?" Helena's face showed weariness, but also relief that Gabriel was taking responsibility instead of walking away. "I've already spoken to a lawyer about my return to Portugal. I am prepared to stay in Lisbon if necessary." He looked at her with suspicion. "And your work?" She sighed. "I've retired from my international projects. For the moment, I am focusing on philanthropic work. My father does not approve, but it no longer matters. My priority is the children." Gabriel let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He remembered how they once dreamed of having children, raising them in a home full of love and mutual respect. That dream had fallen apart. Now, facing reality, they had to figure out how to pick up the pieces and build something stable for 4 innocent lives. "How do we begin?" he asked softly. Helena's lips curved into a sad smile. "Maybe by letting them know that we both love them, that we are both here for them. Everything else can come later. For tonight, let's just be there for them." As the night wore on, Gabriel felt guilt creep in. The 4 children, his children, were clearly bewildered by this sudden introduction. Though they bravely tried to interact with Gabriel, he sensed their uncertainty. After all, in their young minds, he was a stranger, who coincidentally shared their eyes, facial shape, and last name. He tried to be jovial with them, kneeling to their level, listening to their half-stories about Switzerland, about their school, about the snow-covered mountains they missed. But inside, he was consumed by a whirlwind of emotions. He had missed their first steps, their first words, their birthdays, 6 years of precious moments. And then came another shock. During a lull, Magdalena asked in a quiet voice, "Is Hans coming too?" Gabriel looked at Helena. Confusion was plastered on his face. Helena's expression hardened. "We will talk about that later, darling," she said hastily. "Hans," Gabriel pressed. Helena hesitated. Then she cleared her throat. "I've been dating someone, a work colleague. It's nothing serious, but the children know him. He's been around as a friend." An acute pang of jealousy, anger, and betrayal went through Gabriel. This was natural. Helena was no longer his wife and had every right to date. But the idea that another man had been a figure in his children's lives, even if only tangentially, made him angry. He struggled to keep his voice calm. "So, he's been around the children?" Helena nodded, looking away. "They like him, Gabriel. He has been kind to them." Gabriel swallowed the bitterness rising in his throat. "I see." Sebastian chimed in. "Hans takes us sledding. He helped me make a birdhouse once." The image of another man taking on fatherly roles hurt Gabriel deeply. However, he forced a polite nod. "That's nice of him." Helena quickly changed the subject, offering the children a plate of mini tarts from a passing waiter. But Gabriel's thoughts lingered on Hans. He wondered if Hans had become a father figure, and if the children would look for him instead of Gabriel. As the ball was winding down, Gabriel had endured the well-meaning conversations of acquaintances who admired the adorable children. Asking whose they were, he offered vague smiles and quick answers, unsure of how to handle such personal questions. Outside, the snowfall had intensified, covering the city in white. Gabriel stood with the children under the bright lights of the lanterns, waiting while a valet brought 2 cars. He felt the unspoken tension with Helena by his side. They were 2 estranged individuals, forced to reconnect by the existence of these 4 precious lives. "Where are you staying tonight?" he asked. At the Nourids, for now. She replied. I didn't know how you would react, so I didn't make long-term arrangements. He nodded. It's all right. Look, tomorrow I would like to spend more time with them. Can we arrange that? Helena studied him, relief softening her features. Of course they need to know their father. Gabriel forced a small smile at the word father, still grappling with the weight of it. Then, as the children climbed into the waiting SUV, Gabriel placed a gentle hand on Helena's arm. Thank you for telling me, even if it's late. She gave him a grim nod. And I'm sorry. In the silence of the swirling snow, Gabriel watched the vehicle drive away. He stood there for a long time, looking out at the winter night, silently promising himself that no matter what, he would not abandon those children. No matter how painful the transition was, they were his, and he was theirs. A future built together. The next morning, Gabriel woke up in his penthouse overlooking Eduardo's 7th Park. Sleep had eluded him for part of the night, with visions of 4 bright-eyed faces populating his restless dreams. He got up early, preparing a pot of strong coffee as he pondered the next step. He called his mother, Donna Fatima, who lived in a quiet suburb in Cascais. It was time for her to know the news. When he told her he had 4 grandchildren, the coffee cup almost slipped from her hand in reaction. First, she sputtered in disbelief. Then she sobbed. Then she exploded in joy, mixed with confusion and a hint of anger at Helena's secret. Despite everything, Donna Fatima couldn't wait to meet them. Gabriel also called João Castello, who demanded an explanation. They agreed to meet at the Moura e Castello Investments boardroom that afternoon, as soon as Gabriel had a chance to visit his newly discovered family. A text message chimed on Gabriel's phone as he walked into the hall. Gabriel, we're at the zoo with the children. Come see us here, if you can. Gabriel hurried to get dressed, putting on a casual sweater and a coat. The crisp winter air stung his cheeks as he walked down the street, dodging Christmas shoppers and horse-drawn carriages. The feeling of surreal anticipation made his heart beat faster. At the zoo entrance, he found Helena and the children, watching the seals swim in a large tank. The children saw him first, waving excitedly. His chest warmed with their enthusiasm. He approached with a smile. Hello, everyone. Sebastian grabbed his hand. Look at the seals, Dad. The casual use of the word Dad surprised Gabriel, but he squeezed the boy's hand in response, a lump forming in his throat. Helena noticed his reaction. They adapt quickly, she murmured, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. They walked around, admiring the polar bears and penguins, stopping occasionally for hot chocolate. Gabriel tried to soak in every detail. How Magdalena would tug on his sleeve to show him her favorite animals. How Tiago would giggle when the penguins waddled. How Flora would shyly hold on to Helena. How Sebastian would ask a million questions about everything. They were a family moving in a loose group, forging a tender sense of togetherness. Yet Gabriel couldn't help but notice a shadow in Helena's eyes, as if she were keeping another secret. After a while, Sebastian ran ahead. Dad, there's an ice sculpture over there. Helena and Gabriel stayed behind, exchanging a look. They are amazing, Gabriel commented. Smart, curious. I'm impressed with each one's own personality. Helena smiled. You would have been a wonderful father, Gabriel. He looked at her intently. Is there anything else you haven't told me? Because now I need the truth. Everything, she sighed, looking away. There is something else, but I wasn't sure how to bring it up. It's about Tiago. He's had some health problems since he was born prematurely. A wave of alarm went through Gabriel. Health problems. He's fine. He's mostly fine, Helena said quickly. But he has a minor heart condition. Doctors say it's manageable with medication and monitoring. He may need surgery in the future, but there's a good chance he won't. Gabriel's face went pale. My God, Helena, you should have told me. I would have been there for him. She placed a hand on his arm. I know. That is what I regret most. I am ready to fix things now. I brought them here so we can live in Lisbon for a while, see specialists if necessary, and ensure he gets the best care. I will take on any costs if you want. Gabriel's response was immediate. No, we will share. He is my son, our son. I will do whatever it takes to help him. Emotions stirred in Helena's eyes, relief mixed with sadness. Thank you for dealing with this. Their conversation was interrupted by the children's animated calls. They hurried over, trying to smile and laugh as if everything were normal. But for Gabriel, every moment with the children was a reminder of what he had lost, and the challenges that lay ahead. After the zoo, they decided to warm up in a nearby cafe, a cozy place known for its artisanal cakes. The children devoured mini tarts while Helena sipped a cappuccino, and Gabriel stayed protectively close by, taking in every detail about the newest members of his family. Between bites of cake, Flora asked shyly, Dad, do you have a nice house? Gabriel laughed softly. I have an apartment. It's big enough for all of you, if you want to visit it. Magdalena's face lit up. Can we see? Helena shot Gabriel a questioning look. Are you sure you're ready for this? He took a moment before nodding. Yes, I would like them to see where I live. I have a guest room that can be converted into something for them. And so they decided. They gathered their things and took a quick taxi to Gabriel's penthouse overlooking Eduardo VII Park. The building's doorman, Senor Bartolomeo, nearly dropped his hat at the sight of Gabriel leading 4 children by the hand. Helena, children, this is my house, Gabriel said, opening the front door. The lobby was sleek and modern, perhaps a little too sterile for the children's taste. Sebastian's eyes widened at the floor-to-ceiling windows, while Magdalena squealed with delight at the sight of the snow-covered treetops and distant skyscrapers. They spread out, exploring. Helena followed them, pointing out paintings and artifacts Gabriel had collected. Her gaze paused on a photo of Gabriel's parents. Your mother will be overjoyed, she said. Has she already invited all of you to spend Christmas in Cascais? Gabriel replied. A flicker of fear touched Helena's face. It might be overwhelming to meet all your family so soon, he said, gently shrugging. They are the children's family too, Helena. We can take it slowly. I just want them to feel welcome. She nodded, watching Tiago run laughing across the polished living room floor. They deserve a big family Christmas. They have never had one. A warm feeling grew in Gabriel's chest. Maybe, despite the heartbreak, they could form a family dynamic, if not as husband and wife, at least as co-parents. Suddenly, Helena's phone rang. She looked at the screen, her face paling. She excused herself, stepping into the hall. Gabriel stayed behind, an uncomfortable feeling creeping over him. A few minutes later, Helena returned with a pale face. What is it? He asked. Is it Hans? He is in Lisbon. He wants to see me and the children. Gabriel felt a sudden wave of protectiveness, almost territorial. He has no right over them. I am their father. Helena wiped her cheeks with a sob. He is not on any birth certificate, of course, but he is threatening to tell the tabloids everything. About how I hid the children from you, about the details of our finances. He wants money, Gabriel. Gabriel gritted his teeth. So he's blackmailing you. She nodded miserably. I ended things with him as soon as I decided to come to Lisbon. He didn't take it well. Now he's furious. Anger coursed through Gabriel, but he forced himself to remain calm. We'll handle this. I will talk to my lawyers, and we will put a stop to his threats. The children will not be used as pawns. Helena looked at him with gratitude. I'm sorry, Gabriel. It seems like every time you try to fix things, I bring another complication." He gently took her hand. "We'll get through this together for the children." That night, an unexpected phone call shattered the fragile calm. Hans called Gabriel directly. His tone was aggressive, laced with bitterness. "You think you can just waltz back into Helena's life and claim those children? I was the one who helped them for years." Hans spat. Gabriel's jaw tightened. "They are my children, Hans. My blood." Hans laughed harshly. "Your blood, sure, but I was there when Helena needed help. If you had an ounce of decency, you would at least let me see them." Gabriel paused, fighting the primal urge to tell Hans to stay away forever. But he also recognized that the children knew Hans. Forcing them to lose him abruptly could be traumatic. "We can discuss a supervised meeting," Gabriel conceded. "But if you try anything, any attempt at blackmail, I will see you in court." Hans scoffed. "You think your money and power can scare me? Helena's father tried. He didn't succeed." Gabriel ended the call with fury simmering in his veins. Helena, who was nearby, watched him with anxious eyes. "We will arrange a supervised meeting," he told her. "This may help with the transition for the children if they can say goodbye or set boundaries. But he will not threaten us again." She nodded, tears of relief shining. "Thank you for handling this." They scheduled the meeting for the next day in the presence of lawyers at a neutral law firm. The children arrived with Helena, quiet and confused. Hans was already there, his face contorted with anger. When the children ran to greet him, Gabriel's stomach churned. Hans shot a smug look at Gabriel, as if to say, "Look, they are mine in spirit." But Sebastian, after a brief hug with Hans, hurried to Gabriel's side. "Dad, are you okay?" Gabriel's heart soared at the boy's simple question, his concern for him. "I'm fine, buddy," he murmured, ruffling Sebastian's hair. The negotiations that followed were tense. Hans wanted continued contact, threatening to leak scandalous information. Helena confessed that Hans had personal emails and financial records that could be damaging if taken out of context. Gabriel's lawyer threatened Hans with a defamation lawsuit if he went public. Finally, they reached a precarious agreement. Hans would receive a one-time settlement from Helena's personal funds and would agree to no future contact with the children unless they themselves requested it when they were older. It was not an ideal solution, but it would avoid immediate scandal and harassment. The children seemed uneasy as Hans gave them a final hug. Tiago clung to him for a moment, tears glistening in his eyes. Gabriel's chest tightened at the sight, but he tried to remain impassive. Hans left abruptly, slamming the door behind him. Outside the office, Helena knelt to comfort the children with tears running down her cheeks. Gabriel joined them, feeling the weight of these events bearing down on their small shoulders. In that moment, he promised himself that he would never let them feel abandoned again. In the weeks that followed, life settled into a new rhythm. Helena and the children moved into a rented house near Gabriel's apartment. Gabriel spent his weekends showing them Portuguese traditions, like decorating a Christmas tree, baking cakes, and practicing Christmas carols in Portuguese. Finally, the day arrived for the children to meet Dona Fatima, their grandmother in Cascais. Despite the tension and emotions that swirled, the meeting was a joyful occasion. Dona Fatima cried openly as she hugged each of her grandchildren, only briefly reprimanding Helena for having kept them hidden for so long. Christmas morning found them all gathered in Dona Fatima's cozy living room. Snow was falling softly outside. The children shrieked with excitement over presents, and Helena felt warmly welcomed by Dona Fatima's maternal grace. Gabriel, dressed in a comfortable sweater, took a moment to reflect on how drastically his life had changed in just a few weeks. He now had the family he once dreamed of, though not in the way he imagined. Helena and Gabriel still had a lot to work through. Their romantic relationship remained uncertain. The old wounds and betrayals lingered, but so did a persistent thread of love. They had started couples therapy, determined to be effective co-parents. Whether they would reconcile as a couple or not remained to be seen. One night, after the children had gone to bed, Gabriel and Helena sat on the balcony of his penthouse. The city lights twinkled below. The silence of the snow made the moment feel magical. Helena rested her head on Gabriel's shoulder. "Do you think we could ever be a family again?" she asked. Gabriel slid an arm around her, 1,000 thoughts flooding his mind. "I think we already are a family," he said softly. "Maybe not the conventional kind, but we'll work it out." Helena looked up at him, a small smile curving her lips. "Thank you," she whispered, "for giving us another chance." He closed his eyes, inhaling the fresh winter air. "Thank you for letting me be a father." They stayed there for a long time, listening to the distant hum of the city, their hearts overflowing with the complicated and fragile hope of a new beginning. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey of heartbreak, hidden children, and the fragile hope of new beginnings. Gabriel's story reminds us that even through betrayal and pain, love and forgiveness can lead to unexpected miracles. If this touched you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support means everything.